Welcome to the Cohasset Select Board meeting of Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. We are going to open this meeting with a roll call, then we're going to go into executive session. So I'd like to call the roll. Corey
Evans here.
Jean
Haley Dibble here.
Jack Creighton here. Okay. We're all here. We're executive session exemption number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation of the public body, and the chair so declares. I declare, and the board will receive collective bargaining update and potential litigation.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. We're now in executive session. Unmute.
All right, you're live.
Okay. Welcome back to the Tuesday, October 18th meeting of the Cohasset Select Board. We came into a session earlier. We had an executive session, which has since been closed. So we're moving on. Is there anybody who has a public comment they'd like to speak? The rules are you can speak on any topic. Keep it brief. There will be no discussion about that. And the board may or may not take up that subject in a future meeting, but not in today's meeting. Do we have any? All right, we don't. Okay, need to the warrant for the 2022 state elections for November 8th, that we have to vote to approve and sign it. Oh, I'm sorry. I was wondering. Thank you. Well, it's nice to see Judge Cutler.
Justin, do we have anyone in the meeting for Letty's Hideaway?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Here we go.
We have
Stephanie.
Mr. Miller, is that, you know,
Stephanie Burke. Derek Burke.
there's a Derek Burke,
Yep.
okay? Put Derek Burke in.
And Chief Quigley of Peace.
Yep, he's joining right now.
Hi, this is Derek. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Derek is live, his video's just off.
Okay, Derek, go right ahead.
I'm here. Are you letting in Mr. Miller and Mr. Cronin as well? Because they're involved in this.
We're looking for them. We find them, they'll be admitted.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Pardon me. My name is Tom Miller from McDermott, Quilty and Miller in Boston. I'm here on behalf of the licensee. Sean Cronin is also joining us tonight. He is the proposed manager of record.
Could you speak a little bit louder, please?
I can.
Thank you.
Sean Cronin should be joining us as well. He is the proposed manager of record and should be in the virtual waiting room or attendance as well.
Sean's here. Yep, we have Sean.
Okay. All right. With everybody here, as I said, good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chair. Tom Miller from McDermott, Quilty and Miller in Boston, here on behalf of the licensee in their application. As I said, I'm joined by Sean Cronin, who is the proposed manager of record. And as you know, Derek Burke is also here. He is one of the owners and the current manager of record for the licensee.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
I'm sorry, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Could you direct these folks to turn their cameras on?
I'm
Yeah,
unable to
please.
do so.
You are aware that, and we have a counsel here, that in a public hearing, that there has to be video on a Zoom.
Yes, sir, and I would happily do that, but I am not able to do so. I haven't been made a panelist.
Is that okay?
Can you be updated so that he has camera?
Sure, yeah, this should work. Is this Mr. Miller?
There we are. Now we're all ready to go.
Absolutely. Good evening again. I'll pick up where I left off unless you would like me to start again.
That's fine.
Okay. As I said, Mr. Cronin here is the proposed manager of record. He has worked in the hospitality industry for many years. Prior to college, he worked in restaurants as bussers and a food runner. At college, he worked in food service there. Since the summer of 2021, he has worked at Lenny's Hideaway. It's over 18 months now. Since that time, he has gained additional experience with the sale and service of alcohol and the operations of a restaurant. He has since become bar manager and performed well to the point where he has found a place in the hospitality industry. And as such, Derek and Stephanie have felt him capable and responsible to be the proposed manager of record for their establishment. He is a U.S. citizen. He is familiar with the Mass General laws, the rules of the ABCC, and the town's own rules for the sale and service of alcohol. The approval of Mr. Cronin as the manager of record can only positively impact the operations of the licensee. We want to thank you for hearing this application tonight. We look forward to answering any questions you may have.
The board have any questions? Diane?
No, I'm just would like Chief Quigley, if he's willing to just kind of summarize. I know there's a required background check.
Sure. If I may, Mr. Chairman, our detectives did conduct a background check on Mr. Cronin. There's no issues with his background. The thing that I want to confirm and enforce with Mr. Cronin is he's to be on the premises 40 hours per week. Over the past 120 days, there's been some question about who is actually running this establishment. There's not a manager of record. Mr. Burke and his business partners, I think wife, have moved out of state, so we're not exactly sure who's running this place. So we want to make sure that we don't end up in a position where we have a straw manager and someone who's not there actually on the license. So that's my only question. But as far as Mr. Cronin goes, he did pass the background and there's no issues. I just want to confirm that he's actually going to be there hands-on in managing.
Thank you, Chief.
Do we have,
Yep, Mr. Cronin is aware of the requirement. He will be on site 40 hours a week. Mr. Burke and his partner, his business partner and partner in life, Stephanie, are bi-coastal at this point. They own a house in Situate. They are traveling back and forth. And, while they are not in town full time, they are very actively involved in the restaurant. In addition to Mr. Cronin, the restaurant is also being run by very capable front of the house and back of the house managers, in addition to Mr. Cronin. So this Lenny's Hideaway is going to continue to be run well. This is, a place that is a big investment and important piece for Derek and Stephanie, and they're going to continue to treat it as such.
could you send us a letter to that effect to put on the record?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just one other thing, they were operating outside of the actual licensed premises under a special exemption that expired in October, but the managers / owners of record did not comply with the board's request from April. to follow up with inspectional services to have that outside bar. So I want to make sure that it's shut down until it's properly licensed and inspected.
Mr. Miller, do you have a comment on that?
I'm going to have to defer to Derek on that. That is something I have little familiarity with.
Yes, I did meet with the head of the building department and we discussed it. This was just a few weeks ago. And I'm in the process now of having a contractor assist me with filling out the forms necessary to put forth to the town for that. It is not an operation right now. It was a seasonal operation, and we haven't had the doors, so to speak, to that part of the location for 2 or 3 months now.
So I think it's fair to say that until you have that all done and you've come back to this board and gotten permission, you won't be operating that.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
There was a misunderstanding, I'm sorry, there was a misunderstanding that we thought that with the COVID regulations and allowing that, we thought that was, because we had operated it last summer, we thought that it was good to go under the same regulations.
Okay, well, there's no longer any, it's clear now, and Diane, one of our board members.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to pick up on what Chief Quigley was talking about. One thing we haven't done as a board recently is kind of reviewed our own town liquor license policies, because I think it's important. What Chief Quigley was talking about was one of the conditions within our policy. So to my mind, they don't necessarily even need to represent it. It is a requirement of the license holder and the manager to be on premises 40 hours during the serving of alcohol. So
That's correct.
at that point, I mean, just accepting the management of the liquor license, you're acknowledging that you're going to be playing by those rules. So I think that's just important. And I think it's important probably for us to, at some point, when we're not as busy or, on an off night or something, just go and review it, because they're a few years old and there's a lot of nuances in it that's really important for us to know about. And then Chief Quigley also brought up the COVID extension of premises to outside, which I believe was through December of 2023. Is that right, Chief Quigley? Or regardless, we should probably know when that's allowed or whether we need to do new accommodations for businesses that want to serve.
It sunsets in the end of October, but they were issued a cease and desist by the building department.
Okay, because I think there's probably other businesses in town that are still under that. I could be wrong, but there's some that may be under that COVID extension for their premises. Okay, maybe not. I mean, I know
everybody wrapped up. This was just sort of a, they came before, Derek and partner came before the board back in April, and they asked for permission to run this outside, to extend the premises. They were given permission, but an outside service bar was erected without a permit, and it just never made it through inspectional services. So they would issued a cease and desist, and they've complied. They're trying to do the right thing, but it's just imperative to have someone, captaining the ship on premises, and that's what we've been lacking. So I think Sean will solve this problem.
Very good. And Tracy, could you have somebody, I don't know, Chris, can you hear us still? He's on Zoom. Okay, Chris, let's get at some point after town meeting, the facts on our various liquor licenses and all these issues, okay?
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, Mr. Cronin, it says that you've been working at Lenny's for over a year now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Then, I mean, if we have a manager, I see no reason to delay this any further.
Any other comments, Jean?
I vaguely recall when this issue came up with the Red Lion Inn in terms of no manager, the prior owner, no manager being on premises, and there are some steps the select board can and should take if that issue recurs. So I trust that our police chief will alert us to that, but it sounds like we're not going to need to move in that direction. We have Mr. Cronin now, but for Mr. Burke and Mr. Miller's edification, that is not a circumstance that can repeat itself.
I second that. Other comments from the select board? Board would,
I would move that we approve the change of manager application for RBLB operating as Lenny's Hideaway for the appointment of Mr. Sean Cronin. To be the manager.
we have a motion made and seconded to approve the change of manager at Lenny's Hideaway. Made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstains, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and good luck as you both move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving forward on cemetery lot repurchase of Woodside Cemetery, request for apply to things. Who has the details on that? Tracy, do you have that? Chris? We'll just read what the,
The Cohasset resident that is requested to sell back 2 graves to the town at, let's see, Woodside Cemetery. They've been confirmed by the DPW that they are available. She had a deed, she had all the proper paperwork. So normally we purchase them back at a price of $500 piece, so it'll be $1,000.
I move that we buy back, we buy back the 2 graves at Woodside Cemetery for $500 each.
Second.
we have a motion made in second to buy back 2 graves at 500 piece at Woodside Cemetery. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving forward to the fiscal year 22 budget update, preliminary close. Press.
Do we have Jennifer in the audience tonight?
We do.
So officially, welcome Jennifer Mullen, our new Director of Finance and Town Accountant. For anyone who has not yet met her, so very excited to have her here tonight. And Jennifer is going to walk us through the FY22 closeout. So I want to thank everyone who worked with us in the last fiscal year to get us to this point, and to Jennifer for working with Don and others to get us to close, which we are preliminarily tonight. Jennifer, take it from here.
Thank you very much. Do you mind if I stand up?
Is that you?
So this is the preliminary close. It's a monthly report, I think, that you all get, and so this is for FY22. As you know, I just started a few weeks ago, so I'm just getting familiar with the numbers and looking at your budget. Looks like you had a very favorable year. There's a lot of reports here, so I don't want to, bog you down. And I know Chris sent an update and kind of, captured the fiscal year. And so just to, I present things, so I'll just present it the way I would present it. I know these are reports that were given by Don and Chris previously, but the general fund was up by 4% over projections. The revenues were up 23% over budget for your SOAR fund. And the water fund, the projections were up by 4%. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just counting the one that we.
So you want me to go through the financial trends?
Well, we just, since COVID, we've been looking at the hospitality, basically the meals and excise tax as an
Right.
indicator of how businesses are doing in town, and those seem to be recovering strongly. That just popped out when I was looking at it, so.
Yeah, I mean, according to the memo, so you had a very favorable year. And I'm just getting familiar with all the numbers and the way you're budgeting and all that. But you did, so the way I look at it, and I'm just going to present the way I would present normally. So the way I look at it, to look at fiscal health, is really is your estimated receipts. That's where it really comes into play with the economy. Because with your tax revenue and all that, you're projected, when we set our budget, we project that we're gonna get all our tax revenue in, and we have the abatements to offset that. So really the telltale sign of how the economy is doing is with your estimated receipts and your motor vehicle excise tax, hotel, motel, out of departmental revenue, particularly licenses and permits. Building permits are really up right now. But we will be looking at it in the future. I tend to look at, down the road and building permits. I know I came from Falmouth. They were starting to slow down a little bit. Costs are rising. So we really want to keep an eye on that, make sure we're conservative as we move forward and we look at the budget and set the tax rate. We'll be doing that. We have a tax classification hearing coming in front of you next Tuesday. We want to, keep the flexibility so we have places to go. And that's kind of how I would, look at moving forward. We want to monitor it monthly, which we would normally do. But your estimated receipts came in probably $1 million more. Your actual receipts came in about $1 million more than your estimates. So that was really good for free cash. Your budget turnbacks were about 500,000. And those really are the two main areas of really what drives your free cash. And it, health, your undesignated fund balance was up probably $1 million from last year. I can't tell you why. I would say probably for conservative budgeting purposes and leaving you all room in your fiscal policies. You have really strong fiscal policies that you adhere to, and that is, really important. So I think, moving forward, we just really need to monitor it, look at the economy, and just make sure we're conservative and, we can afford to pay for what we need to pay for. I didn't know, I was just going to go through the memo. I didn't know if you had any other, what you normally look at, your presentation. Like I said, license and permit revenue was up substantially. Your excise taxes were up. And then in the water enterprise fund, which I'm really starting to get familiar with, I met with the water commissioners not too long ago, and we'll go back to them in November. You had the new hookups and the increase in water revenues and unbudgeted collections from prior years cover most of the decrease in the collected usage charges. So you have, looks like you have healthy balances in your water and sewer fund as well.
Comments from the board? Diane?
Yeah, just the only question I have sort of going forward that I think at some point we would need maybe a quarterly update on is the ARPA funds, which are up, I would imagine aren't being reflected in the operating budget. So
Right.
just kind of seeing what we've captured, what we anticipate, and where the funding has gone for those, where the expenses are.
Yep, absolutely. I know that there was some ARPA money. As you know, ARPA money is coming in from different places, the county, some of it's coming in directly from the federal government. I did look at, I did see something across my desk about some of the votes that the board has already taken against the ARPA funding. But yeah, I'll familiarize myself a little bit more with that. So the next time I come in front of you, I can give you an update of where we are and look at how the money's coming in. In Falmouth and Barnstable County, we had to apply for our money. I'm not quite sure how it works in Norfolk County.
Some of it, yeah.
Some
So
of us, yeah.
I'll take a look at that as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments from the board? Thank you.
Did you have-
No, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say with the water, given the drought that we had, it looks like the revenue, the finances that we're looking at only go through June 30th, 2022. I mean, I was generally curious about how the drought was affecting our water usage. I mean, given that we had such significant restrictions, it looks like, and this is just more interest than anything, we had a -8% in terms of usage charges year to date, because I know that we were interested in seeing how the new tiers were performing, but we had the drought happen, so things are probably a little wacky. That's just something.
It's also with COVID, the water rates went up, so like the delta will be artificially large.
Yeah.
And this would be as of June 30th, which the drought was a little bit before that, but it also would be in this fiscal year as well over the
So it's
summer. So,
straddling.
yeah, but it's a very good point, and I'll keep an eye on that and take a look at that as I start jumping into FY23.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you
Welcome
all.
aboard.
Yes, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
You came very highly recommended, and now I see why.
Oh, thank you.
All right, moving forward to the select board, over our update on our goals of the zoning bylaw committee. This is an update from our council. I think we ought to make a special note that Judge Cutler is here.
Justin, does that have wheels? Could we wheel that way if they want to stand? The podium? Just that way you don't have to, I don't know how you guys want to stand.
Yeah.
Just trying to accommodate.
If you wanna.
Give it, they stand.
What would you like?
7 years ago, us.
You're gonna sit?
I'm fine
Okay,
sitting.
fine.
I'm fine, thank you.
Didn't want to complicate.
Should have pulled it out for our finance.
That's, I felt bad about
So good evening, members of the board. If you recall, when we were last with you in late July and mapping out, where to go from here with the 4 phases of looking through the zoning bylaws, we've completed the first 2 phases so far. The first was the audit. The second was the diagnostic. You should all have received a copy of that as of September 29th. And based on our joint meeting back in July, one of the things the board had requested was after the diagnostic that we have, a meeting to sort of check back in and see where we are and see where we go from here. I think if you had a chance to review the diagnostic, perhaps if you have if you were suffering from insomnia on a particular night in September and you wanted to go through it section by section, we went through and sort of identified the bigger issues to be tackled, and then we also went through section by section based on looking at things as we had said, the things that need to be updated, things that were inconsistent with either state law or case law. Internal inconsistencies. You know what? That's right, I do. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that this is sort of our talking points, so to speak. Thank you. So I think what we tried to do with the diagnostic, and I'll certainly defer to Judge Cutler on some of our conversations with staff and some of the stakeholders. But some of the goals that had been identified were, obviously we want to make the zoning bylaw more user-friendly, more accessible to folks. We want terms to be consistently defined so that we aren't using the word, dwelling in one section, housing someplace else, and a resident somewhere else, and suggesting that maybe those actually should be given some different meanings. And then also just made some suggestions as to how to organize the new bylaw as a total, but also how each bylaw should be identified. And there were a few, and when we went through the section by sections, we said, this is exactly how a bylaw should be laid out. We should always start out with, what is the purpose? What is this aimed at regulating? What is the problem we're trying to solve, so to speak? And what does it apply to? What kind of permitting is required? What kind of criteria? And it kind of naturally flows from there. And a number of your bylaws actually do follow that format, but some of them don't. Some of them might have been, amendments along the way that, different person comes in with a different style and a different drafting. And sometimes these things get lost in the translation. I think we're now at a point where we've identified some areas that we think, if we're still looking at, say, a spring of 2023 town meeting to bring a certain number of zoning bylaw amendments forward, and then more substantive changes to come forward, say, fall 2023. I think we're at a point where we've identified certain articles that sort of lend themselves to, they could be changed now, and updated. Leaving aside, so we'd be addressing, in Article 1, we'd be looking at the administrative provisions, the definitions provisions, the enforcement provisions, the provisions that speak to the powers of the zoning board, the powers of the planning board. And I think also, Judge Kelly, you thought signs was also one.
Well, yeah, in looking at it, kind of looked at, there were the basic articles, or what I would call the core articles, which if you put aside the overlay districts, you put aside special kinds of uses, what is the zoning bylaw? And so when a person is navigating that bylaw, trying to figure out what's required and what's not required, what is the logical way to proceed, and what sections do they need to look at? Because it's usually not just one. So, well, you have to have the underpinnings, if you will, the authority and purpose. Definitions are a must. You have to have those definitions. And the person has to understand, how do I interpret this bylaw? What if it's not defined? What if it is? What if there's two definitions in the bylaw? What do I do? So the rules of the road are there. How the town is divided up is another rule of the road. And then I'm going to skip over uses and dimensions and parking, which are much more complex. But just as Carolyn said, getting into the enforcement and the administration, just here's again, the rules of the road. We think, and I think the signs is relatively small potatoes changes in that, not substantive. Again, we're not trying to change anything that's existing unless it has to be. And getting it and really treating, how do you treat non-conforming uses and lots and that sort of thing. And those all, in doing the audit, I really didn't see a lot of big issues there. It's really more a matter of reorganizing, tightening it up, getting rid of these redundancies and inconsistencies where there or problems where there might be a problem with interpretation where it's not really clear. Some of those things we put on the list and asked, we need direct policy direction here. What did you mean by this? What is it that you want to accomplish so that we can help you put that in the right language? One of the problems that you run into, because we always want to make the bylaw user friendly, you want to use plain English. People are always saying, use plain English, don't use legalese. The problem is there's a real fine line between using the plain English and having it as concise and really getting to as pointed as you possibly can so that you have what you need to be said. And sometimes it's not so easy to do that in totally plain English that people are used to reading, for their books or whatever. So that's a little tricky, but again, I think trying to keep the present tense, all of those things that your English teacher told you, trying to focus in on those things, making your sentences short, having lots of space between sections, really hierarchically defining what is my topic here? What is the subject matter? What are the sub-subject matters that go into that? And having that organization. And as I say, most of your bylaw was originally pretty well laid out. I mean, there's nothing to really complain about. It's that over time you get changes that don't quite fit. And so we're trying to get things back to where they should be. And of course, we have much more complex regulations now than when you started out. So it's explaining those and getting those precisely the way you want them. These core articles that we're talking about, I see it, what I call low-hanging fruit. It's nothing that people need to be concerned about. Their way of life is not going to be affected and so on. There might be a few places in there where, for example, the planning board or the zoning review committee might say, hey, while we're at it, can we make this change as well? It's a substantive change, and that's something we'd have to decide. Do you want to lump it together, or do you want to have them as separate articles, and kind of it's how you attack it? I think that's enough for one town meeting to handle is, 7 or 8 articles, even if they're simple. I wouldn't want to overwhelm everybody with the changes.
The more important part of all this process, though, is going to be the next step, which is really your use regulations, your dimensional regulations, your parking regulations, which are somewhat outdated. They don't fully comply sometimes with state law, or they could be better. I think that they all do not mesh together. They've all been adopted at separate times, and as Carolyn mentioned, so sometimes you use residence, sometimes you use house, sometimes you use unit. We need to get that all straightened out. That's a pretty big job, but the more important job is having the staff and the boards look at, are these the uses that we want in these districts? Do we want others that don't appear here? Are some of these outdated? And that's going to take a long time. I think maybe the dimensional regulations is more a matter of presentation, because the tables, I should say, are it's too much information. Too much information. So it's putting that in a better format and presentation. It's going to be tedious and time consuming, and it's going to require a lot of policy discussion. Hopefully, that will also bring into it the housing choice requirements that you're going to have to meet. And that will be just attacking those three, or possibly another article, is going to be a big project, and maybe targeted for the fall. Maybe that is something that with proper background and updating with people and good communications and forums or whatever, people will be prepared and ready to come for a session of zoning, because that's going to be a trickier one. I think the other sections of the bylaws, yeah, there's important things that need to be changed, but they aren't as immediate, I think, as these core articles. That's sort of where we're going. We tried to make recommendations to help you see samples of what we would like to do, examples, suggestions, and also raising some policy questions to be considered. One big thing that we focused in on was the exempt uses under Chapter 48. There are many, many exempt uses. They're not mentioned in the bylaw. And so how do you deal with that? Because do you deal with it on a case-by-case basis, and who decides whether something gets a pass on the parking or gets a pass on the setbacks? So those are things that we do have to address as part of the use regulations.
So I think what we'd like to propose at this point is, as we're now sort of looking to enter the drafting phase, our thought is we begin the drafting of those half dozen articles that can be done now, can be tweaked, can be cleaned up, and could be ready for, say, a May town meeting. Meanwhile, you've got bigger issues being discussed. You've got looking into the harbor. There's been a lot of discussion about parking and what should we be doing to either increase available parking or maybe decrease our parking requirements in certain areas. I think tomorrow night, one of the topics that the zoning bylaw committee public forum is addressing is housing. There's also been some discussion about introducing some more sustainability and climate related issues into the zoning bylaw, which is, these are all sort of newer ideas that don't yet exist, but policy decisions that have to be made. And the policy decisions belong with the town. You tell us what you want or what direction you want to go in, we'll draft it to get it there. But ultimately, what we see is that you've got the zoning bylaw committee working sort of more in the weeds on all of this and getting that public input feedback. But we're also reporting back to this board. So, if you see a different way that you want to proceed with all of this, please tell us. Or if there's some, at some point, if there should be like a further check-in so that we make sure that whatever some of these policy decision points are, we were talking earlier about the navigation bylaw. and that we could get an awful lot of people who have some very different views. That could be the same thing with some of these decision points for changing the bylaws. I'll throw out there just an example, if anybody was following, and I know this is dear to Paul, if you were following the planning board all of last year, how many discussions were there about common driveways? And what should we do about common driveways? And should we regulate them? Should we bring them into the subdivision control law regulations? Should we change the bylaw so that we don't allow as many lots to use a common driveway? Should we talk about construction standards for the common driveways? That discussion, I think, started before we were appointed, and it continued for a full year and then just got put on hold because now the zoning bylaw committee wants to sort of pick up the task and pull it forward. Eventually, those are all things that I think this board or your representatives have to eventually weigh in on as to, is this a priority? Do we want to, come back after we get these first, half dozen or so articles drafted and then say, okay, what are the next priorities? What have you identified as the next priorities to be? Is it writing the remainder of the bylaw? Or is it identifying certain things like the Housing Choice Act and parking, or whatever you decide the priorities happen to be? Certainly we can, this is your bylaw. We want it to say and do what the majority of you want it to do. So, your input is critical at that juncture. So that's how we see the next phase. But obviously, if anyone sees it differently or has a different timeline, please let us know, because we're willing to work with that.
I think it's very clear that you have listened to what we asked earlier and are implementing that in an excellent way. The need, of course, was to have, rather than trying to find a consultant and go through that whole process, we felt that bringing it in-house and putting together a logical framework in which to hang all of the policy things, all the policy questions, that, as you say, the select board, we have to make that. The zoning bylaw committee is in the process of making those decisions, get input from planning, and I know there's zoning appeals is also looking at that, but I think that you're on the right track. It's what we asked you to do. You're doing a very good job in that concept. But comments from the select board, Corey,
So,
and then Diane.
obviously, we started the conversation, the importance of understanding and letting the town understand that you have the first section, which is the cleanup and is non-policy. But also, I really appreciate that you've pulled out, sometimes in all the complications, it's hard to see what the policy decision is. And some of the feedback, we had one zoning forum. And again, the feedback, it seemed from the room was a little bit, there's a challenge to understand what we're asking the residents to decide upon. And we're going to need a lot of help with that discussion, because the Housing Choice Act, these have ADUs, they have big impacts on, how many people are here, what are affordable housing lot. I mean, these are really, really complicated things. And I think that what we've struggled to do in the past is pull out what the policy is and what the outcome, what the pros and cons are for our community. And I think that's where, even just how you laid this out is so much more superior than some of the other conversations. No offense to anyone who's done it before, but it gave me clarity on things. And I think continuing that is the best way forward for sure.
Diane?
Yeah, similarly, thank you for your work. I wonder, what is going to happen with the information we gather from these public forums? What is the next step? Is it, after the Harbor Village discussion the other night, is it for that committee, that group to kind of draft where we might want to go on specific policy issues and then bring it back here? And how's that going to roll out? And I'm not necessarily seeking an answer now, but that's something we have to pay attention to. The other thing I also want to do is have a discussion about the timeline on this, because I definitely think Springtown meeting is the way to go for all this cleanup and to just get these sort of non-controversial things taken care of as kind of our building block for the next steps. I also think we have to have a discussion sooner rather than later about when we do want to bring some of the more controversial meaty zoning, because if you remember at last town meeting, there was this whole fake, what's the word?
Well, we know, we have.
People
some
were all
ways to
worked up
describe it, which
about,
are
we
not-
don't do this
are
at
not
special town
subject
meeting.
Appropriate for
Which
public
was-
meeting.
Which was kind of crazy, because it's not true. And I think we need to ahead of time say, this is our framework, this is our timeline over the next 18, 24 months. We're gonna give you this then, we're gonna be bringing some things here so that it's laid out well enough ahead of time so that somebody can't, fake outrage is what it is, so that all of a sudden, wow, where did this come from? And so I think we need to kind of set that pace, both in terms of the community and getting these things finalized, and also to give you some guidance for work.
Oh, to Gene.
I'd say thank you. You guys do fantastic work. I agree with Diane because that meeting was set up from the get-go. But with the informational forums, if we tighten these things up, then we can hit the laws that a number of people want to change or don't. But at least people are fully informed coming in the meeting instead of a select group that's ill-informed, but is led down a garden path that colors their opinion, for lack of a better word. So what you guys are doing is fantastic. So it gives them a clear understanding. And again, Tom Talon's group getting the meetings out, the info sessions, I think they go a long way.
Of course, I
Thanks,
just,
Paul.
just mention too, planning board is an essential element to this. We have to have the whole planning board on board, because that board has to make the recommendations.
And the surprise, the chairman of the planning board is also on the zoning. He, in a moment of weakness, he said yes twice. Gene.
So thank you for your work. I agree with a lot of it, particularly as someone who's been on the planning board trying to implement the regulations, which hasn't always been the model of clarity. Although I did agree the wind turbine ones were pretty good, and we had a big wind turbine project back in 2008. And the regulations were an example of where I think we should be heading in terms of we can understand what the standard is that we need to apply. And so I think from that standpoint, I do think that we should continue on the path that we're on, unless it doesn't sound like there's any doubt, but we should do that. And I think that I would err probably more on the side of precision and comprehension than plain language, simply because the reality is people who are using these zoning bylaws are going to be the planning board, the building inspector, lawyers representing either the applicant or abutters. People are going to want to understand exactly what the rules of the road are, and I'd rather err on the side of giving them that guidance than trying to plain language it for the intermittent internet browser trying to figure out, generally interested in Cohasset zoning bylaws. And so I do think that that is the place we should be sort of driving towards at the end of the day. I think too, your help in really rethinking all the tables we have, which are very difficult to implement as a practical matter, I think would be helpful too. And I think, and this is probably more a comment for the rest of my colleagues, I think we should, as KP is doing the work to essentially redline and implement their diagnostic, I think we should move in real time to also implement the policy choices as much as we can, because from a drafting standpoint, I think it's helpful and cost effective as well for us to try to work into the new draft that they're doing, because I think if they can see where the town is headed, at least from a policy standpoint, I do think that that is helpful. And I think that is, we might not be able to get everything, but some of these things that we've been tossing around too, maybe could be addressed through like a chapter 40A, more precise definitions of uses and what's in the box and out of the box. I think removing some of the ambiguity might also help potentially guide the policy decisions too, like, for example, on aquaculture. Right, if there's law that's in the box and out of the box, maybe that helps inform some of the policy decisions we make. But I do think that if we can sort of walk and chew gum at the same time, that would be ideal. Maybe we can't because it's just resources wise, we can't do it, but I think we should aim for that. If you want.
I would second that clarity is absolutely, and we are dealing with things that will be fought over by attorneys. And I am the son of an attorney. I understand that. So, no wiggle room. Corey.
I was just gonna, I think one of the things we learned from the earlier zoning bylaw attempts was that we have to be sensitive to the ability of the community's bandwidth. And if we're gonna bring them a big reorg, I worry that we somewhat poison the well by having policy things in there too. And I don't want the reorg to be seen as some sort of, red herring or cover story to distract the public. And again, people spin stories. We saw this in real time. So I think when it comes to, walking and chewing gum, I am worried that there are some sewer breaks in the way. And if we can get through step one, and then we're really good to go on the next step, that gives clarity to the community and gives us better chance of success on both fronts.
Thank you, Paul.
Carol, just a question, just sort of like clarification. So we're planning on bringing more of the lighter stuff up at the first time meeting?
Yes.
I got a question about that. Is it possible you disperse the light and the heavy? Because people, we get that in, then next town meeting, people are gonna be prepped for that. Like, this is gonna be a heavy duty session. And like Diana said earlier about the decks being stacked, is there a way of interspersing it? So it's kind of a level playing ground on both meetings? You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, can it be done? It can be done. I just question whether it can be done for a May town meeting. For example, like one of the things that we had talked about amongst ourselves was, well, why don't we also tackle the use table and the dimensional table? Those we all agree they need to be cleaned up. We don't need 23 footnotes and a single, double, triple, quadruple asterisk that we're all trying to follow. But are we then going to change something with respect to the harbor or anything related to, say, the downtown areas that then would be deferred to, say, a December 2023 town meeting? And then are we going back and retweaking something in the table? It doesn't mean we can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just that, things start to get messy, the numbering gets a little bit out of sequence. But I do hear your point, Paul, is that, do you want to suddenly have like all this light housekeeping stuff that passes with very little discussion at town meeting? And then 6 months, 8 months later, we're at the next town meeting.
And the
And we
board
all,
drop.
boom, we've just walked into the buzzsaw because now here we are getting into the real heavy meaty stuff. That's why,
what I'm concerned
right,
about.
that's why I think we thought that at least maybe signs could be one bylaw of some substance that maybe we could pull out and also pursue at the Springtown meeting. Maybe another thought is, do you do it over 3 town meetings? If you're concerned that December 2023 town meeting might just be too much, and I always
You have
chuckle.
to have the housing choice. You have to get that.
You gotta get the
housing
housing choice in, that's true too, right?
That's a must.
So that's,
Jean and then Diane.
I think we need to step back though and remember why we're doing the zoning bylaw rewrite. It's because our residents have a desire, I think, for some new policy direction and clarification. And so I view all of this as really surgery. And how many times are we going to go to the hospital and begin opening up the patient over and over again? And they always have to go under anesthesia no matter what, because it's just the way surgery happens. It may be a bad analogy, but I do think that once you start opening up the bylaw, if this is, and Corey, I take your point about, we just have to be very truthful about what we're doing. If this is a ministerial change, that's all it is. If this has a policy impact, that's exactly what we're doing because we believe this is what our residents want and are asking for. And if we're wrong, they can, we'll have to think about how to put it on the warrant from that perspective. And maybe we can use the different warrant articles, but I do think we need to keep our eyes on the prize, which is some real, I think, substantive directions that people want. I don't think people care as much about the tables as I do. I think they care about the fact that, we have pipe issues or we have congestion or we have common driveways that are just being really I think those are the things we need to continue to keep our eyes on the prize about and not let too many years pass. We're now in year 4 or 5 and the developable land is getting less and less in Cohasset, as we saw from the financial readout on permits. And so I do want to just sort of draw us back to the prize.
Thanks, Jean. Diane?
Yeah, this is a conversation to be continued, and I agree. I think that if we can add some substance, that's not gonna mess up.
There's one thing you really need to think about adding sooner rather than later, and that's dealing with solar energy. And we can help you. We have done solar energy bylaws. We can help you formulate something, I think, for the spring, because it's imperative before someone
Puts a solar farm in or huge things over. I hear what you're saying. I can see that it's rampant, it's highly profitable. There's all kinds of subsidies that will probably be misused. So that's one of the things that we really look to you as our council to say this is, and this kind of speaks to Paul's point of maybe maybe we need to have the ability to, as we do the framework, to address things, right? And that would go to what Jean is saying. There are things like height and massing and some of the FAR, which might be applicable.
Yeah.
But I do believe that we need to probably stretch it out. But if we stretch it out, then we can also, in that extra space, put in some of the things like the solar that needs to be done. Or as Jean says, the height that needs to be done. And this is a thing for the select board to decide. And you're so helpful in bringing these things up and telling us this stuff, because we really can't afford to ignore it. So, thanks.
I think it's a communication issue. It's a political issue. I mean, how much can we? Again, the process is going to make sense in terms of you don't want to go back and have to retweak things we just changed. But if we can get a couple of big substantive wins under our belt that aren't going to be completely impactful, but I also think we need to talk about the dog and pony show, getting to annual town meeting and letting people know ahead of time what they're getting. We're getting this kind of reorg and we're setting the steps in place to get us to fall when we're going to be bringing some of these bigger pieces. And remember, we were going to do a massive change at last special. And so, I hate to
It wasn't that much.
no, it wasn't, right? But now we're talking, it's gonna be 2 years before we're gonna see that.
Jean?
So in terms of the timing, what's realistic from your standpoint if you were to, for example, begin redlining as our zoning bylaw committee and the select board, wrestles through some of these more substantive issues, and we see if and how it can fit into whatever red line that you'll ultimately be proposing. I'm just thinking about resources on your end as well as we try to figure out strategy.
Well, the articles that would be more housekeeping, I think we could realistically have all of that by the first of the year. And those could be, on your plates or the zoning bylaw committee's plates, but certainly with enough time to get teed up for a planning board hearing for spring town meeting. And I think we could then look at solar signs and maybe something else as we start to go through this, maybe we say, you know what, okay, we could also pull out, you know, the article that addresses all the special permits, like the plan review, because that's all procedural stuff. We could probably identify some of those so that the spring town meeting has a pretty good balance between housekeeping and substance.
And different warrant articles.
Oh, they have
Yes,
to be in different
yes,
warrant
yes.
articles.
Well,
And as a matter of fact, how you structure those warrant articles. is
Makes a
also
difference.
important.
So we
You
can
may
have
have part A,
non-con-
B, and C, and maybe you don't want to move C because you've got a big back.
And then,
Or
Judge Cutler brought up planning board, but also there's a lot of other boards that we need to consult here. And so I also wonder, to Gene's point about bandwidth, you know, if we're gonna have to consult affordable housing, AEC, I mean, they're gonna have to do their work too. So some of this timeline is also gonna be predicated on other boards to be able to do their work. Because we obviously can't bring it to town meeting without getting all the boards input, you know, and have them properly deliberate.
So I'm hearing from the board that number one, we want the housekeeping structure. And we do want the necessity, we call them the necessities, and we can intersperse those in different warrant articles. So if one gets turned down, the whole thing doesn't work. And is that strategy that the board is comfortable with, and Paul?
I do, I just think mixing in the light and the heavy is gonna serve us well. Different articles from the ban, okay, so if people that are averse to something for reasons, you know, are, wait a minute, oh, that's passed, so it's just, instead of fluff and
Right.
substance and fluff.
And we can certainly tackle some of like the overlay districts, which really need more reorganization than, you know, and a little rewording, but not, for now, we're not changing anything. I wouldn't want to tackle something like the use table with the housekeeping, because that's almost a night of town meeting discussion. I mean, you know, you just don't want to overwhelm people that way, but if there's just something.
You put it at the end of the meeting, and everybody wants to go home, and all those in favor, they'll go, I can go home. You know how to do it.
So to summarize, it sounds like the cleanup, but then basically leaning on you all to give us a handful of separate articles that you think would be an appropriate workload for this town meeting, and then you all can match. That sounds.
And we would count on the boards, particularly the zoning review board, to be concentrating on those policy issues that we're heading for the next town meeting. That, like, that to me should be the focus. So we can get, and anything other new that they want in there.
So I think it's helpful, we as a board, I think this is a strategy. Are we all comfortable with?
I think we should talk with the zoning bylaw committee,
Good.
given that we've charged them to do this about, you know, their, any substantive policy directions that we want to try to tackle for Springtown meeting on top of this. Like, part of what they're dealing with right now are some tweaks, important tweaks that will have a change to, for example, our overlay districts. And so if we're already going to touch the overlay district, they're already holding public hearings on, you know, those articles, then I think it's worthwhile to get, we need to get their opinion before we make any quote final decision, but
Yeah, that,
I think that's.
What is your timing on when you normally have your articles ready to go?
for the spring.
March, right? March, April, yeah, March.
The latest. Yeah, oh, that's, they have to, yeah.
Yeah, the planning board still needs to hold public hearings.
Right.
Maybe our next step is to check in with the zoning bylaw.
Yeah,
and
and they're
just
meeting
say,
tomorrow.
you know, because they're really in this community feedback mode as opposed to really identifying what we can tackle, but we can have that conversation with them.
And we need to let them clearly understand what we're tentatively looking for and listen to what they have to say about whether how doable, how that works. But I'm hearing from the board that that's kind of the way we'd like to go, but we'll listen, of course. to them and change if need be. And I'm sure they'll be very vocal about letting us know.
They could say, we got X coming up on our plate and Y coming up, and there's no way we're gonna be ready for. whatever
And
it
that's
might be.
fine. We
Yeah.
can,
We
the
need that.
beauty of this kind of structure is it's very flexible. And we have the framework, which needs to be done. And you've done a good job of identifying that. And then where we need some help is things like the solar and the housing, which you point out is not something that can be ignored.
Right.
So we hang that into, it's kind of like a two-part structure, Paul suggested. Any other comments from the select board? Well, thank you very much for coming all the way down to our little town. And thank you for giving us great legal advice. And we're not going to tell any of the other towns, so they won't poach you.
I actually did read your summary. Well, I skimmed it and I was like, boy, this is why you pay lawyers a lot of money.
Well, unfortunately, mea culpa, there is one big mistake, I have to tell you.
Okay.
I was gonna say, is there a reward if we
One
find
of
it?
one of the comments is absolutely wrong. And I saw it, I thought I had deleted it. It was in my early draft, and I said, oh, this is a mistake, delete it.
Yeah.
I thought I had deleted it. I didn't. so-
I picked up on that, but I'm not going to.
You're not,
Point
you're
it
not.
out.
Don't point fingers. It's totally my fault, not Carol.
Is this gonna be a Where's Waldo? Do I have to go find it?
You'll find it, it'll be obvious, it'll be obvious.
We're having pasta for dinner.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Good to see you folks.
Good seeing you.
Really read it.
Okay, as we wait till Jean gets back. Anybody else needs to take a short break? We all
Red
set?
bean and chili.
We are.
All right. Can the people, somebody calm down the peanut gallery over there? This is a real meeting. This is official. I hope you didn't have a sound trip.
No, that was on.
Oh, okay, well, the town has a sense of humor. Okay, we're back from our break. Let's continue and moving on to Roads and Sidewalk Committee charge. The charge has been sent on the packet. If everybody's had a chance to read it, do you have any comments? And,
My apologies. I thought you said any comments, and you said my apologies.
oh, no, I'm just,
Okay.
I'm asking, I just want to say, we are prepared to vote on this if we come to an agreement. So anyway, any comments on the,
I didn't realize that there was a red line version until like 5:55 today, so I'd love to have an opportunity to incorporate those changes in the main document. And I'll just bring it back next week. Is that, yeah. Is that okay?
Fine.
Yeah,
it's
I didn't see
late,
it.
fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Corey, I didn't get to it.
No, no
this
stress.
weekend, and I thought, you know, the red lines were-
Okay,
So the 6B is Jean's red line?
The gene edits one, yeah, 6B, yeah.
Jean-
Yeah, I'll
okay.
incorporate them and we'll just give me next Tuesday. Thank you.
is it this major, or is it like a one line change?
I have new middle review, so
Oh, okay,
we'll just give,
fine.
yeah.
All right, fields and courts, an update.
So there's been many changes since last week.
Oh, wow.
Yesterday or even this morning. So this is the project is evolving. David.
That's what happens.
Yes. So, so originally we were proposing, last time we met, we were proposing the field study.
Michelle, do you have a version you can forward to Justin so we can put it on the Zoom by chance? Okay.
I'm sorry. So we originally started out last week talking about Milliken Field and the need to potentially go forward with additional money for engineering, design, concept, bid documents. The cost of that was about $322,000 to ultimately get us to that $6 million project at Milliken Field. Since that discussion, there's been a lot more input from community members that feel as though perhaps this is being rushed. And is there anything we can do in the short term to, alleviate some of the concerns of the community with less money until we have time to plan an entire project, socialize it, have public forums, and really do some community outreach. So something that we thought would be beneficial for the community is the Milliken Field shed. This project started in 2017. So this project was supposed to be a concession stand, bathrooms, and storage. Currently now, there is this storage building on site that has a small concession window, but no bathrooms. So every year we bring the porta potties in and we take them out. The residents are tired of the porta potties. So that CPC funding in 2017 of $188,000, unfortunately, was not enough to get us a building with bathrooms and a concession stand. We then went back to CPC in 2020 and asked for an additional $15,000 because we thought we could do the container version of this project. We have since learned that the containers do not work. They don't have an outfitter that can outfit the container. So therefore that project was off the table. The total amount remaining from the CPC funding is $137,000. We have since met with Jeremy DeBona, the head of Cohasset Youth Soccer. We've spoken to a contractor. We've spoken to John Hallen, our building commissioner, our electrical contractor. And what we're proposing now is that we take the existing shed that's on site that currently holds storage and concession window, completely gut the interior, make it 2 bathrooms and a concession stand. So we'll use it is large enough. So it's the existing building. So therefore we're not adding an additional structure to Milliken Field, which the neighbors do oppose. They do not want another structure there. So we'll use what we have. It's weather tight. So this is something that can be worked on through the winter months and be ready for the spring. In order to do this, the contractors are estimating we'll need an additional $100,000. This will also give us additional storage space. We've been working with the baseball boosters, and they have a small shed on their side of the field right next to the baseball diamond. It is aging, and soccer and baseball have agreed to purchase a larger shed, or we would purchase the larger shed, they would share it. So we've removed the shed that's there, put a larger shed on that footprint, and we would now have shared storage space for both sports. So if anything, all of this studying and communication has brought the sports teams together to try to find a unique way to work things out to benefit the community. So I think we like where this is heading. And I think in the spring, if we come with a real plan for annual town meeting, I think we'll be pleasantly surprised with the outcome.
Jane, and then Diane.
So first, Michelle, thank you for all of the work you've done. Michelle really has been trying to think about every potential option that we have to meet the needs of the residents in the most cost-effective way possible. And I know the audience can't see, but we are looking at yet another design for Milliken Field that moves the parking around to a different part of the neighborhood, in part because of some of the feedback from the neighbors on one side and the schools too. And so I think this just reflects that there's more work to be done to really land on. And to my fellow select board members, if you look at all of those green lines outside of the tennis courts, that is parking. Note that the parking has changed from behind the baseball diamond to over where the green lines are. I think, one thing that I touched upon, but I want to continue to put out there is that we should know by the end of December whether we get into the MSBA program, which I do think is going to be an important consideration for us as we think about how we're spending money, how much we're spending, and what other opportunities may exist with respect to fields in the high school, middle school parcel. So that's a big wild card that's out there. in terms of other field capacity that may be there in the future. I don't think we should take our foot off the gas with respect to continuing to try to think through the field and other upgrades, but given the feedback I received, I'm a little concerned even that trying to do a feasibility study at this point might be premature in terms of what exactly we're studying. I think the select board would probably be better served if we continue to kick the tires on various options and then come to annual town meeting with a bigger, or not bigger, but a more comprehensive plan as it relates to the fields and courts and probably maybe ask for the whole amount, because we'll need to ask for the whole amount anyway. The feasibility study is just exactly that. It's really the engineering plans. We would still need to get the remainder to actually do whatever we're going to build and renovate. So at least then we'll have the benefit of a lot more community input at this point, as well as knowing where the MSBA is going as well. That said, it would be my recommendation to still move forward to figure out what can we do to help alleviate some of these recreational issues that we know are out there. To me, trying to get that concession shed built and over the finish line is critically important. We need to find the money for that. I think the Beechwood Playground is important, and that's something that's going to remain regardless of what happens at Milliken Field. And so again, I'm looking for sort of short-term opportunities to advance the ball that are going to be impactful regardless of what the longer-term plan is.
Thank you, Jane. Diane, and then Corey.
Just clarification in that this new design, this new proposal is kind of, we're gonna put that off right now in terms of
Yes.
talking about special town meeting, we're potentially discussing just asking for $100,000.
So that is just for the Milliken portion.
Yeah.
And I think we should also, so if you want to move into the tennis and pickleball courts.
Can we just talk about?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and just really quick
Yeah,
question
sure.
on Milliken, when those original CPC dollars were funded, one of the goals was to get ADA compliant bathrooms, and there was some resistance about hooking up the sewer. So would this cover that? There's sewer on that road?
There's sewer on that road, and Wayne Sawchuck will be involved as a sewer commissioner. There were discussions with the sewer commissioner about a year or two ago to bring that line up and connect it to the building.
Has that been calculated in these costs?
It is my understanding that this $100,000 will cover everything we need.
Thank you.
Corey.
So, my oldest is now in the soccer program, and
Good luck.
well, and I think this is really generational, and I'm not saying anything that no one knows, is that parking at Milliken Field is truly, I don't want to say that it's strong, but it's terrible. And it's also doing a disservice to that neighborhood. People turning around in driveways, so, again, I always want to have a good structural reason, but I think this would be a good reason, a good format to have a forum with that neighborhood. There's a problem here, and there's been a problem here. And we want to solve it for your benefit as well as the benefit. We only have so many fields. This problem isn't going away. And I do wonder if there's opportunities where, where we can add parking, but we can listen to that community and say, how can we minimize the impacts here? Can we close a parking lot? Can we ensure that a private way stays untraveled when it's not needed to be used? Are there creative solutions to that everyone's livelihood can be better? You've got kids running across the street, you're trying to get picked up on the side of the road while cars trying to park. It's really, really bad. We have to fix it no matter what. There will have to be sacrifices, but I think if we can hear that community first, then we can creatively decide what the best path forward is for everybody. And I think we should do that immediately. Have a forum with that neighborhood, talk about these different parking ideas, talk about what it means, and see what they say. They live this every day. They may have some great ideas.
Comments, other,
First off,
just to
thank you so much
clarify.
for all your hard work. And with all due respect to the people up in the field, I mean, if you buy a house across from the field, you got to expect a game or two. And, those parking lots were there. And again, I understand it's an issue because I've gone there many, many times. You know, comes part and parcel of what you're looking at. You're not gonna get any development across there, you're getting a field. So that's a conscious decision, is my feeling. Not that I'm averse to.
The point is, we have that more, right?
But we do, and this layout looks pretty nice. I understand moving it and talking about it later on. I think there's gonna be some understanding.
Just a piece of clarification before Diane and then Jean. Didn't we approve Beechwood last meeting?
So I don't think we came to a consensus because we were talking about a study that we've now found out we do not need a study because the size.
Just Beechwood only?
For just Beechwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah.
clarify. that. Anyway,
Sure.
Diane and then Jean.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that tonight, if possible, we give some guidance in terms of this proposal for Milliken Field, whether we want to go and ask for $100,000. Your discussion about parking, I agreed, and bring the discussion to the public is going to help us get to that bigger plan, whatever it might look like in the spring. But right now, we're really pulling back a little bit and looking specifically at this Milliken Field and realizing that 2017 vision. And as a soccer parent, I was all for it.
Jean?
I mean, just to get to brass tacks, I would recommend we take the feasibility study off of the warrant for right now, that we figure out how to fund the differential of the concession shed that's needed, just sticking on Milliken, the concession shed money that's needed, so that might be CPC. We should talk about that. And then I think, Corey, to your point, you know, we're looking at a new design with new parking, and I think that we've run out of money with our consultant. And I think we need to tap up the fund a little more, maybe 15 or 20,000 to enable us to get more designs. If the residents come back and say, oh, how about this, or how about this? Like, as we try to be flexible and evolve, that still costs money.
Yeah.
And so I think that we should think about that because, you know, depending on where you put the parking,
Yeah.
you'll get different reactions from different sides of the road, right?
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
I
Right.
think that,
And it could ultimately impact how the fields get laid out.
it could.
Yeah, I think we're obviously gonna have a meeting with the Milliken Field. I think that's a consensus. We just have to figure out how we're gonna do that. I will point out that this is, want to pull age on anybody, but when I was taking my daughter in third grade, we had the same problem. And that was more than.
Let's fix that.
That was more than 5 years ago. I'll leave.
6 years.
6, all right.
Beechwood.
Beechwood.
Before we move on to Beechwood, could I just confirm with the board for Michelle's sake that, and maybe we could do a motion afterwards, but I would, and Corey, you tell me, the concession shed, I think we should go to CPC, that is covered by CPC funds. That's certainly a lot less than the feasibility study that we were thinking about asking them about. But this is a CPC eligible project, and
The feasibility was coming out of allocation of one-time costs, right, the 322. So if we just do,
So what do you?
It wasn't CPC.
What,
so
clarify
my
specifically,
suggestion is for the Milliken Field, we need at least, and we're gonna confirm on it, the 100,000. The question is, how do we fund it?
well, let's just fund it up, let's just adjust the 322 to 100 and put in the one-time cost and get it done.
One time, well,
This
if it's
is just
CPC
for the-
eligible,
just for the shed.
we should be seeking yeah, for the shed.
Okay.
Should we be seeking CPC funds for the shed? Because
So just from having conversations with CPC, since they funded the 188 and the 15
Correct.
in recreations, this doesn't include the recreation's putting in $25,000. I think if we could use one-time cost to fund the 100,000, because now we have the Beechwood playground and we're going to CPC for that. And we're gonna figure out, we're doing tennis and pickleball, so that's.
And there was, if you don't mind, I'm sorry.
No, go
There was a
ahead.
sense that there was a meeting last night about, CPC being sensitive to finding multiple pots of money. Right, so if there's funding that's been used CPC, there was discussion about finding other sources of funding to complete stuff. So the fact that CPC is already, given money here, I think it would be appropriate for us to ask for Beechwood for the new ask, not necessarily this, and CPC's already contributed. Does that make sense?
Let's clarify. What Jane, you're looking for is the select board to say the $100,000 for this to stand alone and whether we want to do that. Is this what you're suggesting?
Yes, and then the next step up, and how do we fund it?
Right,
Do we
okay.
need to go to CPC, or are we gonna take essentially unrestricted taxpayer money, even though it's eligible for CPC money, unlike other projects? And that's, I think, the fiscal decision before us.
So do we first of all, let's decide whether we want to do this. And, all right, so is the sense that we want to move forward with this shed?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yes, and, I mean, are we,
We'll just do a motion that we want to do that and then we can handle the set. I just
So
want to
moved.
move it along. That's all.
okay,
The second,
second,
we've had moved in second that we just proceed with $100,000 for that Milliken shed, we'll call it. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention,
Abstain.
abstain.
Abstain, because we just, there was an unfunded mandate, we just did, so.
No, I know, but it just is a policy matter. And you know, if you wanted, in these things procedurally, all you have to say is, in your discussion, bring that up and maybe.
Or you said you want to move on, so yeah, no problem.
You're fine with it?
I would just suggest, let's change Article 4 from 322. It sounded like that was already budgeted, right? That's what Chris told us last week. If we can just change it to $100,000, we freed up one-time costs and we've accomplished our goal. I guess it's just, unless I'm caught in something, if I'm misunderstanding.
Chair, if I just may, because Jean also mentioned having a little extra money to work on Milliken, so I wonder if this is, we make the number 125 for upgrades to Milliken, upgrades and study at Milliken Field, including the completion of the, you know, aforementioned, like, one number. I personally think it should come out of free cash, because I do think CPC, I don't even know if they're meeting next week. I mean, we're talking, there's almost no timing to go and have that kind of discussion.
There is a meeting coming up. There is one more meeting left,
Yeah,
so there is not. Yeah, there's not.
I think we should just do 120 or whatever the number is, and it's for the shed and any other study work we need to get us to an ask at annual town meeting.
Thoughts from the board?
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think we can do it.
Motion?
Did Chris want to say anything?
Yeah, keep us here till midnight, Chris. Go ahead, I dare you.
Oh, no, I'm not saying nothing. Just standing there.
So we've already put Article 4, so do we need a motion to amend Article 4? Chris, do you actually want that from us? Or do you want to just change the article and then we'll vote to recommend it?
No, I'd rather you give clarity, so make a concrete action and then we'll amend, and we talk about the warrant in a few minutes.
Okay, then I would move that we amend the line item number 9 under Article 4, allocation of one-time costs for the field study from 322.50 to 130. 125.
What'd you say, Diane, 135?
130.
130 for the purposes of field study and concessions, completion of the concession stand project.
Okay. That motion made and seconded to 130 to the concession stand. All those in favor, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries unanimously. Good, we're moving along. So, Jean, do you have anything else on fields and
The Beechwood Playground.
Beechwood? Paul, yes. What do we want to do? Do we want to?
I think well, let me back up. Is the select board in agreement that we want a new playground? Last time we considered repairs, but it's for a playground that's 27 years old and has a 30-year life. It strikes me a new
If I
playground.
remember correctly, Michelle said that one's pretty well past its shelf life.
Yeah.
We
So-
can repair the library parking, playground, but that one's kind of, Beechwood's kind of had it. So am
So
I correct in that?
Yep, Beechwood was purchased from WearGuard Corporation when they went out of business. So we got the equipment used and we've had it for a long period of time. and it's time to replace it.
I think they're doing part. I think
So I
they're doing
think
labor.
last meeting, we kind of were in favor of this.
Yeah.
So
So we just need direction on, there's no need for a study because the size of the playground is so small. Any vendor that goes out there can lay out the playground, and give us the specs that we need. Good news is there's several, vendors on state contract, so we don't have to bid the equipment. We will have to bid installation. But there's also a school contract out there that has installers. So, the price is the price that we're getting. So I don't think there's gonna be any surprises on bid day, if you will. The latest cost we got was between $210,000 and $240,000. That was to keep the full rubber surface, which would keep it ADA compliant for the life of the playground. Things we're incorporating in this playground are some ADA equipment. So children, handicapped children have access to play just as well as their friends. So we're really gonna make sure that this is for the entire community.
now the field itself, is that going to be
That is,
synthetic or?
nope, so the field's not even a topic at this point in time
Okay, just
because,
wanted-
yeah, so
no
CPC
PFAS or
did
anything.
fund a nice restoration over there. And then CYBSA also did a complete restoration years later. So that is in some, it's in great shape.
Diane?
Would the new playground include the fencing around it?
It does not include the fencing.
And we would need to
It needs fencing.
replace
Yeah.
fencing, so that number is gonna be higher.
Okay.
Good. The gates are plus, yeah.
We might be able to get away with replacing the gates.
One of the gates goes.
Yeah, well, it's a double gate and it opens onto the road.
I just, yeah, I don't think it's, I mean, we've had complaints about that, and I think that's,
Yes.
if we're putting a whole new playground in, we might as well
Replace the fence.
replace the fencing. So the question now is funding source.
Funding source. So we brought this up to CPC last night. They did want to see a spend down of how money was used in the past for and how this was funded in the past. They do have some of that information before them. They asked if recreation was able to pony up any funding for this. And they also asked if there was any private fundraising available. Based on this being a public park on town property, I don't know that we want our residents to fundraise for their kids to play in a park. But we can certainly reach out to recreation and see if there's any opportunities there. But what we'd like to see is that recreation or facilities, however it may work out, maintains the park so that we do get that full useful life of 30, 35 years out of it. It's CPC eligible.
So a question, maybe this is for you, Cory. What's the fund balance in the CPC rec account? And the undesignated, the unrestricted fund balance? It was like 3 million last time I checked.
It's two now, it's for not unspent funding, because there's some that's already allocated, it's about $2 million, yeah.
And how much is in the recreation portion?
I don't have that split, sorry, but I do have the historical data, so CPC was CPC basically fully funded last time back in November 2006, the ball field, the basketball court, and the playground, which we purchased from somewhere else, so there is precedent for CPC to take on the full cost of this thing, and that was, 18 years ago, math will fly, but, so. Just saying that. What I would recommend is, I think would it be appropriate for us to approach CPC for the full ask? We don't really need a motion for that. You can just do that and
You can
then
do that.
see what happens.
So why don't we do that? Do we have any other discussion on that? Everybody pretty clear what we're gonna do.
I just think the full ask should include whatever a fence might be, whether that's
I'll get
another
a quote for the
25 or
fence.
something,
So
and then.
we want to withdraw the previous motion.
No, there's no motion on this, right? No, I think we're good.
We're good.
We're good,
We're all
absolutely
good. I'm just trying to,
And just to kind of get the sense of the board, if CPC says they'd be willing to fund half or 2/3, we still have some money in undesignated I think we should be prepared to talk about that next week.
Okay, any other comments on that? Jean, you know, set on all that field support stuff?
Yeah, I think that I just want to be mindful that we have many capital needs in this town, which we'll be starting to more vigorously address through long-term financial planning, and that I think we should make a hard push for the full amount through CPC. This is why taxpayers are willing
Totally agree.
to pay extra money for CPC to get the things that they want, that we might not be able to otherwise fund through our existing tax base, given all the capital demands we have with municipal buildings. And I'm not going to preach to the choir, but I do think that this is appropriate.
Okay.
I will,
100%.
I will relay that message to the CPC committee.
Right.
Yep, on the board's behalf, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Happy to do that.
And we can put a big sign up too at the playground.
I
Like
think
other
so.
towns.
As long as you're-
CPC,
Brought to you by
As
CPC.
long as you're willing to pay.
But
they
they
got
got
the sign too.
full amount.
Okay.
The sign.
Signed by law, right?
All right, moving on, we're all set with that. Fields and Parks, special town meeting warrant articles review and vote articles.
Excellent.
Chris. Where did you go, Chris?
I'm right here. All right. So do you have just in the most recent version, or do you want me to share the version I have here?
You got it.
You got it, and
You got it.
Justin's gonna share screen.
Awesome.
October 19th, is that correct?
No, the 25th.
Oh,
It says 10:25 in the right-hand corner.
Oh, I got a 19.
yeah, I have a
Oh,
19.
that's the wrong one.
Yeah, the hottest, freshest version is the 25th.
Yeah, she got one from Jen.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Ben. Design.
So Chris,
Yes.
First want to share screen.
do you want to share a screen or do you want to walk us through that?
I'll tell you what, let me, if it's easier, let me share the screen. Let me see if I can do that.
Then everyone watching at home can see too.
Yeah, it makes it easier. Hold on. All right, you seeing what I'm seeing?
Loading.
Yeah.
Make it bigger.
Good.
That's great, thank
That's
you.
good.
Okay, so Article 1 is this transfer of funds that we collect for cable TV to cable TV. Jennifer Mullen has set the income as we have as in the accounts right now is $120,000. Advisory has recommended approval by a vote of 8-0. So the select board, which has already put this on the warrant, can now make a motion to support or not as you would.
I move that we recommend Article 1.
Second.
Article 1 has been recommended and made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Motion carries.
Number one is all done. So number 2 is going to go to advisory tomorrow night, and then you'll get it back next week. But here's just a quick look at what it looks like at the moment. It's about a little bit short of $32,000, and they're almost totally random. And they all tie back though to, unfortunately, some staff changes where some things just kind of sat in the wrong inbox. They're all real, and they all need to be done. So
We want to pass or wait for.
yeah, pass. I would pass on this, Jack. You'll have it next week. All right, the stabilization. Questions? Okay, stabilization.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we recommend Article 3, stabilization funds as presented.
No, 2, we're at 2.
No,
Oh, we did that. Wait.
We're waiting for advisory on 2.
Yeah, but Chris just said he wants us
so
to.
stabilization.
No, 2. I'm recommending you pass on number 2, Jack. And advisory gets that tomorrow, and after they vote on it, you'll have it for next week.
Oh, when you said pass, you meant, wait, okay, I'm sorry.
That's what I meant. Sorry, I'm sorry. I apologize. So.
Article 3, stabilization.
We got a motion and a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, unanimously done. Article 4.
Okay, so I've made the one modification to what's number 9 on this. So advisory has looked at this. and they voted all but the two highlighted ones, because we're talking about collective bargaining agreements tomorrow with them. And then Milliken Field, that's brand new, right? So I'll have to talk with them tomorrow about that as well.
We can't vote on this tonight.
No, you can, yeah, I think you tend to like to vote on these as a block, so, but advisory's cleared all but two, so.
All right, but we're not ready to vote on it tonight. Article 5.
This is in a final stages too, but it's not quite ready. You'll get that next week.
Okay, Article 5 pass. Article 6.
Article 6 is, that's also finalizing next week, so
All right, pass on that. Article 7.
this one's ready. Advisory has recommended this by a vote of 8 to nothing.
All right, thoughts?
I move to recommend Article 7.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Article 8.
I move that we recommend Article 8.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, passed.
I have to just, I think I'm gonna ask you to make one modification. So on the warrant you approved last week, we had as Article 9, authorization to adopt state law, giving the select board authority to adopt shellfishing regulations. Further research has indicated that 1942 town meeting did indeed approve that, so you don't have to have that on the warrant anymore. So if someone could just formally move to remove that prior article.
I move that we remove the former Article 9 regarding shellfishing bylaw committee or committee, whatever.
But this Article 9 says easement from First Parish Church.
Yeah, previous
Right,
Article
right.
9.
It's this is, you're looking
Okay,
at
so
the,
that's done. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's all done, thanks. Article 9, new Article 9.
okay, new Article 9 is, so this, we need to have an easement with the church to get into the clock to do the repairs.
Those in favor?
Advisory is recommended, so.
Our clerk, our note taker needs us to.
Come on. We're good? Okay.
Well, if she wasn't laughing so much, she could get her
I
work
know, but
done.
it's.
I move that we recommend Article 9.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
This is for the clock, just for.
Article 10.
So Article 10, I don't know, have you heard any more from Jack, from Chris McFarland from Conservation?
No.
Okay,
Although it looks like there's a vote that's recorded here.
yeah, Conservation has the vote. They've
But
recommended
advisory-
it. Advisory's gonna get it tomorrow night, so I guess you can wait till next week,
Yeah.
Pass.
okay?
Article 10.
Article 11, this is, we talked about this, this is carving out a piece of, a small piece of Wheelwright Park to put a cell tower in. So this has been approved by advisory. I would recommend that you do the same.
Dean, did you have a comment on Article 10?
No, you know what, I was gonna say with the wetland protection bylaw definition, it strikes me that there could be some explanation required. I see there's an informational summary. I'm assuming this is it and finalized. Are we gonna have anyone talk to us about
If we want.
the effect of this? Are we dealing with a lot of vernal pool developments? It looks like maybe we are. I'm happy to put it off to next week. I'm just forecasting for next week. We maybe need
Okay.
a little more.
Does the board want to get Concom in here to explain?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yep,
okay.
Lauren, yep, absolutely.
All right, so
Wherever
we'll
they're
do
doing
that.
with advisory.
Remember, Chris, we need that on the agenda for next week.
Sure, I got it.
Thank you.
Representative.
I move that we recommend Article 11 for public safety communications towers.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Removal of Article 12, Police Department.
Skip
So
and what about?
Advisory is just holding this for our conversation tomorrow night. And I'm still, I have a memo from Chief Quigley that I'll share with all of you. If you want to wait till next week, I think that's fine.
We'll pass on that. Article 13.
This has been voted by Water and Advisory. It's ready to go.
So we recommend Article 13.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So,
Passed. No, we won't use passed. Approved. Thank you.
Okay, the next two are the
Still
citizen
14.
petitions. I just need to know how the board would like to proceed.
I think we need to still invite the petitioners to talk to us and then we can make a recommendation.
Yeah. we won't.
Next week.
Okay, can we get them here next week?
Okay,
first?
yep.
Okay.
that for 14 and 15?
All right, Article 15, this is a citizen petition navigation bylaw. I think our sense is that we may or may not want to do that, but if we do, we probably want to have our own version. So we probably would not take a position on this. And we should be prepared to take a position. Is this or not? But anyway, on this, we would, how do we correctly abstain, Chris?
Well, I think last week we discussed putting these both citizen petitions till we had the opportunity for the petitioners to come forward. So
Okay. Well, we can do that too.
specifically for these two citizens petitions, I think that's what we should do.
Everybody
next week.
Happy with that?
Yes.
So we're gonna have be prepared, bring sleeping bags next week. We'll be here. All right. Navigation bylaws, we're all done.
Yep.
Oh, rest. Okay, town manager update. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. We're close on the warrant and we're very close on all of our labor contracts. So I hope next week publicly to present all of those for approval, at least a good chunk of them. That is you've met Jennifer Mullen. We will also get some of the other new staff in front of you shortly as well. So that's my very quick update.
Select board comments,
Make a
starting with
motion to
Gene. and- What?
Select board comments, go through.
Yeah, we'll start with Gene and go around through Paul, Corey, and
Happy Halloween. It's gonna be Halloween on Monday, so everyone please drive slowly and with your lights on. For the sake of all the trick or treaters.
Right.
That was not.
Paul.
I'll just echo Gene's sentiments so we can move on forward.
Yeah, nothing further.
Gene, Diane?
Quick thing, last week we approved something for December 10th, but we have not yet heard from the chamber or whoever is the sponsor for the village stroll. I've had a lot of residents reach out to me, so if we could get on and make sure they get that application as soon as possible.
My only comment is Selectman
Thank
Paul
you.
Grady, who lives on Cushing Road, has the best Halloween thing almost in the whole town. He also, tell your kids, he also has lots of the best candy around. So stop by Select Board member Grady's home and get as much candy as you can.
And he's also making a motion to adjourn.
We have no minutes, so.
We have no.
That's our treat.
That's our treat.
Second.
All right. Motion to adjourn, is it seconded?
Yeah, seconded.
Made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're done.